You gotta, just like Marty's doing, you gotta, when you get people that wanna listen about it, you gotta lock the door.
Well, I think so much of Civil War writings, and I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but maybe for women in general, is I don't want to read about details and details and details and details about a particular battle, because it just, just, ugh.
Well, this is true, and one thing that I have found out when I got into this is that one publisher told me that I was talking to, he said, if you're going to write fiction about the Civil War, write about something that women are interested in. And I said, what? He said, put a good love story in there. So I have been doing that. This one has got a great love story, and it's got a great ending to it. And I think, and fortunately, I've been able to sell quite a few at book fairs and so forth to women readers. And it's a formula that you have to learn about. I'll tell you that. Marty, how are we doing on time?
You can start.
Can I start? Okay. As I had mentioned to you, I write Civil War fiction, and what I do, I base it on fact. And any good fiction is going to be based on fact. And in fact, a lot of the people that are in this book are actual people that were involved. What this is about is a Southern plot that the Confederates had to kidnap Lincoln or a member of his family with the idea of trying to hold him for ransom and end the Civil War. The protagonist in the book is a U.S. Marshal from the Eastern District of Kentucky who got involved in this because the Confederacy was printing money, counterfeit money, in Madison County. And it's amazing how all the flow of all this goes all the way throughout Kentucky and into other states. Kentucky probably would rank number 5 nationally in events and battles that happened in the Civil War. Now that's amazing because Kentucky was not declared for either the North or the South. But since I've been involved in the Battle of Richmond, it's just amazing what we have found out, the different things that happened. And everybody wanted Kentucky because of its position. Let me just read you real quick a blurb I've got on the back of the book here that will give you a little more information about it. The protagonist in the story is a marshal named Clay McDowell. U.S. Marshal Clay McDowell is haunted by a recurring dream about the Civil War. It's a continuing story in which he's an active participant in attempting to prevent a kidnapping of President Lincoln or members of his family. The effort is part of a Confederate plot to end the Civil War as McDowell deals with spies, a counterfeiting ring, and finally, the participants in Lincoln's assassination. Along the way, McDowell falls in love with an actress he is recruited to spy on John Wilkes Booth and his compatriots. Now, what I'm going to read you is a meeting that McDowell has with this actress named Pauline Cushman. And Pauline Cushman was a real person, and she really was a spy for the Union. Now, what I did was take all these facts and to make the story a little bit better. I put a dialogue in and so forth and so on, but based it on fact. And that McDowell ends up as at the execution of Mary Surratt and all the people involved in the Lincoln assassination. Let me read this fairly quickly here for you. And Marty, if we get to a point that you want me to stop.
11:27.
11:27. Now I'm prepared to go for an hour, you know that. All right. This particular chapter, and I'm just going to read sections of it, is about a meeting that McDowell has with Pauline Cushman at Morgantown, West Virginia. He's traveling one way, she's traveling the other. Max stood in line of rail patrons waiting to debark their passenger car at Morgantown. They were halfway to Washington, but a layover was required as a new engine and cars had to be put in place for the final leg to the nation's capital. The gauge or uniformity of track widths varied as America struggled with its rail travel, a still young means of long-distance transportation. Until a standard gauge was effected, Vehicle wheels had to be matched with rail widths, as cars of one line often could not be used on that of another. This was the case at Morgantown. The substitution of engines in cars often was a long and cumbersome process, but passengers took it in stride, realizing it was better than travel in a wagon or stagecoach. Clay, who had been called to Washington by Hill Lehman, who was preparing to step onto the station platform, when a waving motion caught his eye. It was a lady holding a white handkerchief. He watched the back and forth motion for a while before gesturing to himself and mouthing, "Me?" She nodded enthusiastically. As he drew near, his heart beat faster. "Pauline," he exclaimed, "what are you doing here?" She was a vision in a blue plaid dress, complete with bonnet, parasol, and reticule in white. A white shawl was draped loosely over her shoulders. "You're looking good, Marshal," she smiled, slipping an arm through his. "And you especially," he returned. "Walk with me," she continued to smile, "and focus on the small talk. We're being watched." Pauline steered their way into a depot waiting room. "Find us a private place to talk," she whispered, sitting on one of the benches. "Do it quickly now." "Are you okay?" Clay clasped her hands in his as he spoke. "I am now, but our Richmond friends are suspicious, and I'm sure I'm being followed. Now, this is Richmond, Virginia." "A tall, attractive woman and a man in a gray suit seem to be everywhere I go," Pauline explained. "I wired your office yesterday, and your deputy explained that you had left for Washington and had a layover today at Morgantown. I arrived here about an hour ago, and a new train should be ready to leave soon. I'm on my way to Cincinnati and hope to find a theater job there." "You don't have a booking?" Clay asked. "No, and I didn't have time to inquire about one. They're after me, Marshal. I'm certain of it." She shivered, and Clay pulled her close to him and held her. "Okay, Pauline, tell me from the beginning." She sat back, took a deep breath, and began. "I finished my engagement 2 days ago and realized I didn't have another booking for nearly 2 weeks. Now, this is at a theater in Richmond, Virginia. I thought I'd use that time to learn more about the plans of Wilkes Booth and his companions. I spread the story that some costumes and jewelry had been stolen from my boarding house trunk, and I planned to remain in Richmond and see if they could be found. I knew it wasn't a very good excuse, but it was all I could think of at the time. That gave me the opportunity to visit the theater when it was dark. That's when no shows are scheduled. I managed to hang around the dressing rooms and just by chance saw Wilkes and this tall, attractive lady enter his room. I listened at the door and heard them talking about some counterfeit money arriving from Kentucky that would help fund the kidnapping plot. I heard Wilkes complain that it didn't work with his wife, but this time I'll get that tyrant Lincoln. Wilkes was really exercised, but the lady was more restrained and tried to calm him. I heard her say that they could hold Lincoln for ransom in Richmond, and if they did, Wilkes reasoned that the president could be exchanged for the release of Confederate prisoners of war, or possibly they could force Union recognition of the Confederate government and bring the war to an end. Then Wilkes went into a tirade about Lincoln and began throwing items around the room. Something hit the door and I was so scared I started moving away. I'd just taken a few steps toward the stage when Booth came out of his room. He screamed at me, "You there! What do you think you're doing?" I stopped and explained that I'd lost something and was crossing the stage to look for it. He immediately accused me of spying on him. I denied it and believed he would have struck me if the woman had not interfered. He called her an odd-sounding name. I believe it was Antonia. She got him to calm down and returned to the dressing room. I immediately left for the boarding house. I packed my things, took a carriage to the railway station, and bought a ticket to Cincinnati. As I was waiting on the train, I saw Antonia and a man in a gray suit some distance away. Whenever I'd move, they'd move, and they boarded several cars down from me. I haven't seen them since we arrived, but I know they're following me. Exhausted, Pauline exhaled and swallowed. Mac took a picture from a desk and poured her a glass of water. which she drank quickly and gazed at the ceiling through half-closed eyes. "There's more," she said, "and this really scares me. I wrote you about the man with the facial scar. They call him Major and sometimes Zach, and another who's called Powell." "I remember," Clay nodded. "Well, I overheard Zach talking with Powell while they were waiting to see Wilkes. Zach said everything was ready and they'd stop the train after the layover at Morgantown. Powell asked if they were going to blow the engine and Zach said yes. And then they'd attack the freight car where the gold was hidden. The gold apparently was in bars that were being shipped to Washington from Denver. Zach said the bars would be in crates marked mining and farm implements." Clay frowned and looked away. "That doesn't make sense. Why would gold bars be transported to Washington instead of the mint in Philadelphia?" he asked. "I don't know, Marshal," Pauline wearily interrupted, "but that's what he said. And you're missing the point. They're going to blow up the train that you'll be on." She slumped in her seat, covered her face with her hands. "No, no, no," Pauline cried. "This is insane. All of it. How did I get mixed up in this craziness?" Clay resisted the urge to hold her. He merely sat expressionless, waiting for Pauline to regain control. He held up a warning finger as she raised her head. "Stop it, Pauline, right now. You're tougher than this. What I've asked you to do is no picnic, but it gives us an edge, an upper hand. We couldn't ask for more. With this information, we'll stop this craziness, as you call it. And yes, I'll be on that train that they want to destroy, but everyone from the station staff to law enforcement will know about the threat and will stop it, and we'll win. And you're going to win too. I'll wire the Hamilton County Marshal about the threat on your life, and when you get to Cincinnati, he'll see to it that Antonia and the man in gray are either disposed of or taken into custody. And for added insurance, take this." Clay handed over a small but deadly Derringer. "This is a .44 caliber weapon that'll make the biggest hole you ever saw. It's loaded, and all you have to do is cock it like this and pull the trigger." Mac eased the hammer back down and placed the Derringer in Pauline's palm. "Just be close to your target, not more than 10 feet away. One shot is all that you'll need. The result will create enough uproar to discourage anyone else from bothering you. Hang on to the weapon. If you don't know how to reload it, ask a lawman or a soldier to help you." Clay then handed her his office card. "If they have any questions, give them this card and tell them to wire me because you're under my protection. And tell them if you're harmed, I'm coming after them." "Got it?" the marshal snapped. Pauline stood with amazement. "I've just seen another side of you," she stated with surprise. "I had no idea you were so forceful, and I must say I like it. I like it very much. One other thing, Pauline, put the Derringer in your purse so you can have easy access to it." "You mean my reticule?" "If that's your purse, yes, put it in your reticule. Then all you have to do is place your hand inside and fire the pistol without having to remove it from your reticule." "Oh, Marshal, I can't do that." "Why not?" "Why, it would ruin my reticule and upset my ensemble. That white color goes with just about anything, any spring or summer gown that I have." Clay looked away in disgust. "Damn it, woman, I'm talking about saving your hide. I'll buy you 100 reticules." Pauline placed the Derringer in the reticule and smiled sweetly at Clay. "Marshal," she said, placing her arms around his neck, "you really do love me, don't you? I know you won't say it, and you don't need to, but we'll work on that after we're married." Are we out of time?
Pretty close.
Okay. "Now kiss me." The ticket agent knocked on the door and entered as they embraced. "Pardon me, Marshal," he said. "If you're finished with the interrogation, it's time for the young lady to board her train." I'm just going to go over this real quick, at the end of it here. But what, she boards the train, the man in gray goes on after her, and Antonia stays behind because she's going to get on the train with the marshal, and each of them are going to try to assassinate the other. Unknowingly, Pauline and Clay now were trapped in a web spun by undercover experts. And this time, the spies would take no prisoners. Am I a minute over?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Thank you. This has got a fantastic ending to it, and it'll knock your socks off. But it is a great love story, and the situation between the two of them ends up in the final chapter, and like I say, you're really going to be surprised by it. Thank you for being here and listening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.